Hey, I'm Nick Claire, and today I'm working on something truly unique, a custom spooky epoxy table that looks like it's floating with drips. This is a design challenge that pushed me to get creative with epoxy, and if you stick around you'll see the entire process until the final piece comes together. I'll be giving away one of these custom pieces, so stick around for all the details. Initially, I faced some setbacks. During one of the earlier trials, the final application of the drips didn't turn out as planned. The result was so disappointing that I had to start over from scratch. Let me show you the process of how I perfected the piece. I realized that the round table I already own is the perfect size for my new creation, so I decided to put it to a good use. I used the glass top as a template to mark my styrofoam. I needed to do 7 pieces to get the pumpkin size to be 14 inches total, and the legs will be 5 inches, so the table height would be 19 inches tall. To cut the styrofoam pieces, I first covered the ground with drywall to prevent scratching the panels. Precision wasn't crucial. I just needed my cuts to be larger than the glass template circle. Once I had all pieces cut, I used blue-gray stuff for window and door because it doesn't expand as much and offers better adhesion compared to other brands. When applying the spray foam, I focus on the center rather than the edges. This technique helps ensure a clean cut when using the hot wire cutter. After applying the spray foam, I double-checked all the corners to ensure everything was aligned correctly for a smooth circular cut. I only glued 5 of the 7 pieces together because that's the maximum length my hot wire cutter can handle. To prevent gaps between the panels, I placed a lot of weight on top and let the foam cure for 4 hours. Cutting the styrofoam requires a steady hand. Adjusting the voltage of the hot wire cutter is crucial for a smooth cut without burning the foam. I set the voltage to around 8 volts to get the right balance. Whenever I needed to reposition, I would carefully lift the piece away from the circle, turn off the voltage, reposition the wire near the circle, and then turn the voltage back on. This process ensures that the hot wire cuts through the styrofoam cleanly and accurately. For the 2 remaining pieces, I used sticks to hold them together while cutting. Since I planned to place one panel on top and the other on the bottom, I made sure to cut them slightly larger than the circle. This extra margin would make it easier to refine the cuts later on. While my initial cuts were pretty good, I needed to do a bit more sanding before I drew the jack-o'-lantern's face. I already made the face templates and used tape to secure them while I marked the shapes. For carving out the details, I used a hot knife. You can find the affiliate link to all the tools I use in my bio if you're inspired to create your own projects. I then use a utility knife to trim the edges for a clean finish. Now comes the fun part, shaping it to look like a pumpkin. I started by curving the top using a curry horse comb, bringing the iconic pumpkin shape to life. But before I could dive too deep into the carving, I had to ensure the table would be stable. That's where the legs come in. I decided to use 3 legs for balance. To make sure everything lined up perfectly, I printed an equilateral triangle and placed it at the bottom center. This helped me trace the placement for the wood panel to secure the legs. I also drew a smaller circle to mark where the table's curvature should end. With the legs map sorted, I could get back to the carving. I saved the pumpkin's face for last, and before that, I needed to define the lines for the pumpkin's ribs. These would also guide the legs to give them that drip-like appearance. Pumpkin ribs aren't always uniform, so I made sure to vary the width, adding some natural imperfections that bring the design to life. To carve the pumpkin ribs, I used a 12-inch metal file. This part took quite a bit of time to get the perfect curving shape, but the effort really paid off, as you can see the design coming together just as I envisioned. By the way, I'm excited to start this journey and build my online business with your support. If you enjoy the content and want to see more, please subscribe and share. And once I reach 1,000 subscribers, I will be giving away one of my pieces to a follower. So make sure to subscribe here and on Instagram. Thanks for being part of the journey. Styrofoam alone can't handle heavy-duty use, so we need to top coat it with epoxy to make it strong and prevent cracking while keeping the table lightweight. To start, we applied a layer of black paint to the styrofoam and let it dry. This base layer is crucial for achieving a completely black finish before adding the epoxy resin. While waiting for the paint to dry, I worked on drawing the face shapes on acrylic sheets. I chose acrylic because it provides a professional, glass-like finish while maintaining a bit of flexibility. However, working with acrylic can be tricky. It can crack if you're not careful. I found that using a hot knife was much more effective for cutting it than a utility knife, which often scratched or cracked the sheets. Next, I painted the acrylic pieces and I added a spooky touch by splashing red paint. As the paint dried, I set up LED lights inside the mouth and eyes. Given the size of the piece, I used 2 lights to ensure it was bright and it was controlled by remote. Since the acrylic sheets were still transparent, I glued them to a white baking sheet to give them a tinted effect. Although the sheets were mostly opaque, I added a layer of folded foil inside for extra depth and then carefully taped the lights in place before inserting the sheets. Now, this part required a lot of precision. The acrylic pieces fit tightly into the face cutouts, especially around the mouth. I had to be careful not to crack the sheets when inserting them. To make the process smoother, I created a small gap from the inside of the piece, allowing the acrylic to slide in without too much pressure. It took patience and a steady hand, but I managed to fit everything perfectly without damaging the acrylic. To keep the lights hidden, I curved a space under the table and used peel and stick strips to secure them. To secure the legs, I cut a wood sheet into 3 parts and glued them to the styrofoam. I made sure to position the legs where they aligned with the pumpkin's rib curves, giving them that drip-like appearance. To reinforce the bond between the wood and the legs, I used JB Weld, a steel-reinforced epoxy, for extra strength. Then, I screwed the legs into the wood for added stability. Now, to top coat the styrofoam, I mixed the epoxy resin, combining 2 cups of part A and B with some black coloring and cornstarch to thicken the mixture. Given the size of the piece and fast-drying nature of resin, my mom and I worked together on this step. Unfortunately, the mask we brought didn't fit her well, And with dealing with the fumes and harsh cleaning chemicals, she ended up with a severe allergic reaction. While waiting for the resin to cure, I shifted my focus to carving the pumpkin stem. I started by gluing together 4 layers of the styrofoam and letting them set. I drew the desired shape of the stem on the foam and used a hot wire cutter to cut out the basic form. After cutting one side, I traced and cut the other side to create a rough sculptural block. I then refined the edges and sanded it down to achieve a rounded look. Next, I marked the areas I wanted to carve and used the needle file to shape them. The key was to create varied lines and depths to mimic the natural texture of a real stem. Once I was satisfied with the carving, I painted the stem black and let it dry. I then applied a layer of thickened black resin to give it a durable, finished look. After, I sanded the table to achieve a smooth finish and remove the glossy layer. I then painted it with matte black. To lock in the color and give it professional touch, I sprayed it with matte polyurethane. This step was necessary because resin has a naturally glossy finish, and I wanted to create a contrast between the matte black sides and the glossy orange top layer. To create the drips effect on the mouth, I used rounded sticks, cutting them to different lengths as needed, and then I glued them to the mouth with super glue. Then, for the stem, I simply sprayed it with matte polyurethane. Once it was cured, I used sticks to lock the stem to the table and glue it using foam spray. I had to stay holding it for a couple minutes. This is the most critical part of the process. Getting the drips just right can make or break the table piece. If I mess up here, I would have to start all over again. So precision is key. To create the drips, I started by mixing resin part A with cornstarch. I added a couple cups of cornstarch at a time to prevent clumping and overmixing. Stirred well, and then added a bit more. Once the consistency was starting to thicken, I mixed in the pumpkin color dye. After that, I added part B and repeated the process until I achieved a paste-like consistency. I tested my drips on a cup to make sure everything was on point. But just when things were going smoothly, my phone dropped into the resin. No matter how hard I tried to clean it, the resin ended up ruining my zoom camera, unfortunately. I borrowed another camera and moved on like nothing happened. I placed the mixture in a vacuum chamber to remove as many air bubbles as possible. I let the mixture rise, then deflated, and repeated the process several times to ensure I got rid of any bubbles I could. Then, I transferred the mixture into piping bags, similar to those used for cake decoration, and began applying the drips. I made several rotations around the table, adding more drips as needed while being careful not to overdo it. Because the resin sets quickly, I needed a second hand to spread it efficiently across the top. Even after spreading, there were some inconsistencies, but applying heat helped level everything out. It's important to keep the torch moving to prevent burning the epoxy. The heat also helps eliminate any remaining bubbles and ensure a smooth, professional finish. This piece turned out exactly as I envisioned. It's amazing to see my idea come to life with such a unique design. I'm thrilled with how everything came out together. If you love this design, you'd be happy to know I'm currently working on my website where I will have a limited number of custom pieces like this available for purchase. In the meantime, you can reach out to me directly on Instagram at NickLairLC to stay updated and even to snag one before the website is live. Now, as promised, here's an exciting news. Once I hit 1,000 subscribers, I'll be giving away one of these custom epoxy tables to one lucky follower. It could be you. All you need to do is subscribe to my channel and drop a comment below. I'll be announcing more details soon. Thank you for watching, and I can't wait to show you what's coming next.